So SAP,
Sure.
you know, right? SAP is basically a three-tier architecture, right? So at
Yes.
the top level, we have a presentation layer, or you can call it as a presentation server. The mid layer is called a SAP application server, and at the lowest end, we have database. Okay. So why SAP has a three-tier architecture? So if you see initial release of SAP, earlier it was only a two-tier architecture. You might have heard about the R2 system, right? So that
Yes.
R2 was a two-tier architecture. So in that two-tier architecture, application server and the database server, these two were combined, were at the same layer. Okay. Later on, SAP has separated database from the application server and put it as a separate layer. So now it is called R3 system, right? So when
Yes.
when we say presentation layer, so what it is? So presentation layer is basically, the layer at which we interact with the SAP system, right? So it could be our desktop, right, screen or laptop screen. We log into the SAP system. So just like I logged into the SAP system, that screen itself represents a presentation layer because I'm interacting with the SAP system, right? It could be a mobile screen, it could be tablet, it could be any way through which I can interact with the SAP. So basically it is a SAP GUI. Okay, GUI is graphical user
Yes.
interface. So there can be any number of users who can interact with the SAP. So all the users interact with the SAP system at the presentation layer. Now the mid layer, that is application layer, that is also called the application server. So at this layer all the SAP programs reside, right? So for example, as you worked on the FICO, so whatever FICO transactions are there, right, or FICA transaction or the material master transaction, SD transaction, MM transaction, the code and program for all these transactions resides at the application server layer. Okay. So whatever program we are going to
Okay.
write, we'll write the program at the presentation layer and then we'll save it. When we'll save it, it will be saved onto the application server. Okay. So all the programs, executable files, even the kernel database, even the SAP kernel, and all these things are stored at the application layer. Okay. And at the lowest layer we have the database layer. So database layer, so it could be any database system, right? So SAP's own database is also there. That is a MaxDB. You might have heard about it, but that is almost a failed database, right? So SAP no more, promotes MaxDB to the client. But still, there are a lot of clients still using MaxDB, right? Now there are other databases like Oracle, DB2, a lot of SQL Server, a lot of databases available in the market. So we can use any of those databases at the database layer. Now,
Yeah. Yeah.
any can you think of why SAP has separated a database layer from the application layer? What is the advantage over here? What was the logic behind it? Earlier it was embedded into application server. Now it's a separate one. So any guess or any logic you can think of?
Uh, no, I'm not sure.
Okay. Okay. So I tell you what is the main reason.
Yeah.
There are a lot of
Okay.
SQL database in the market, right? So what happens if you see, if you
Yes.
take the example of Oracle and you take the example of DB2, both of these two databases are the SQL database, right? But if you see, syntaxes are more or less same. Maybe 90% syntaxes of both the databases are same, right? But not exactly 100%, right? So what happens if I
Yes.
put the database into application server? It means when a programmer is writing a program, he would be basically fetching the data from the database directly, right? Because it is at the application server and the program also resides at the application server. So what will happen? I have
Uh-huh.
to write the select statement. Suppose I am writing a select statement to get the data from the database. So I have to write the select statement which suits Oracle, right? But if I change the database tomorrow, what will happen? My that select statement may not work. Why it may not work? Because if I change from Oracle to DB2, DB2 may expect another select statement because the syntax might be a bit different, right? The way Oracle works and the way DB2 works, the way MySQL works, the way SQL Server works is bit different, right? Because These are all from the different organizations, correct? So this
Yes.
was a big headache for the developers, and it requires lot of cost for the customer also. Suppose there is a customer, the example I have given you, I work for About Labs. Now suppose currently About Labs is using Oracle. Now say after 6 months or 1 year down the line, they want to switch it to a DB2. So what will happen? They have to do a lot of rework because developer has to go and change all the programs, right? And currently if you say there are thousands
Yes.
and thousands of programs in the SAP, right? Thousands are, you can see there are lakhs of programs, right?
Yes.
Standard programs are there, custom
Yes.
programs are there. So what will happen if a customer want to change a database? It means there was a limitation that customer cannot change the database, right? Because that was practically impossible to go and change all the programs, correct? So what
Yes.
SAP has done? So currently when the database was there in the application server, developer has to write a code in the native SQL. Native SQL, when I say, it means the SQL which is specific to a particular database, right? SQL. So if I am a developer or you are a developer, you will first ask your customer which database you are going to use. Your customer says Oracle. Okay, then you will write your code according to Oracle, right? If he says DB2, you have to write code according to a DB2. Then it is a lot of problem for you as well, right? You have to learn so many things.
Mm-hmm.
You have to learn the data SQL syntaxes of the Oracle DB2, MySQL. Lot of SQL databases are there in the market, right? And it is practically impossible for a
Yes.
particular developer to learn all these things, right? Because there are hundreds of databases in the market. So that approach was
Yes.
practically not possible, and it was failed. And customers, lot of customers in the market, they started moving out of SAP system. They said, no, this is not possible. We can't have the SAP system because it sticks to a single database system. So to solve this particular problem, what SAP has done, SAP has separated the database layer, and they have come up with a separate layer for the data. Now, when we say separate database layer, what will happen at the application layer? Application layer will interact with the database server to get the data, to post the data, to update the tables, all this. Now, what is the benefit for a developer? Developer has to write a uniform code irrespective of the database. Okay, whether it's SQL Server, DB2, whatever databases are there, right? So you will suppose you want to select the data from a particular table. Let's say select start from Mara, material master, right? You will write a select
Mm-hmm.
statement.
Yes.
Now whatever database your customer puts at the database layer, your select statement will work for all the database. Okay, so it means customer got a
Okay.
flexibility to choose a database, right? And developer
Mm-hmm. Yes.
would be happy because no rework would be required, right? Whatever your program's functionality is there, it will be there irrespective of the database. Now question arises, so how does SAP connects with the database server if there are different database servers? But still, when a query hits a database server, it would require a query in the native SQL, right? And the query which we are writing now is a generalized query, right? So that query is
Yes.
called OpenSQL. So what SAP has done to solve this problem, SAP has come up with its own, the SQL queries, right? So that format is called the
Mm-hmm.
OpenSQL. Okay. So now when we write a queries in the SAP, that is not in the SQL format. Okay, it is pretty much similar to the SQL format, but not exactly a SQL. So we write the queries in the open SQL format. So when we say open SQL, it means it can be used with any of the database server. So what SAP does, SAP has already written an interpreter for lot of hundreds of SQL databases available in the market, right, which are frequently used by the customer. So now I have written select star from Mara. So what SAP
Mm-hmm.
interpreter will do? There is an interpreter between the application server and the database server. So what SAP will do? I have written a query select star from Mara. That interpreter will accept that particular query, and then it will check at the database layer which database server is there. It's Oracle, MySQL,
Okay.
DB2, MaxDB, or any other SQL database available in the market. So suppose the Oracle is there. So what SAP will do is the interpreter will accept that query and reformat that particular query. Okay. So when I say reformat, it means it will reformat it according to a particular database. So what interpreter will do, it will accept a open SQL statement and it will convert it into a native SQL statement. So native means a SQL statement is specific to a Oracle, RBXDB or Oracle or whatever it is, right? And then it will send to the database server. And then the database server will send a result back to interpreter. Interpreter will send a result back to the application server, and the application server will send result back to the presentation layer for the user, right? So
Yeah.
this is how it works. So that was the biggest, achievement for the SAP to come up with the ERP solution that is database independent. So actually speaking, this is not exactly a database independent. Still dependency is there. Why dependency? Because SAP interpreter, which converts OpenSQL to a native SQL, it is limited to the SQL systems which SAP has considered. Suppose there are 100 systems available in the market, SQL system, SQL database, right? But SAP has written a interpreter for only 50 databases, right? So,
Yes.
so you can use only 50 databases with the SAP system, not all the 100, right? But still, working with one database, you have got a flexibility of 50 databases. That is still a great achievement, right? And as you know, if there is a new SQL database in the market, which is widely being used and customers usually demand for that particular database, then what SAP does? SAP includes that database into the interpreter definition. Okay. So whatever databases are widely used, SAP includes it into the database interpreter. So when they include it into a database interpreter, then what happens? Your program will automatically start working with that particular database also.
Okay.
Okay.